You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whenever you're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, you've made the right choice. Today is December 1st, 2024. It's a Sunday, so it's another day for the Central Indiana Sports Report. I'm your host, Greg Mengelt, and Susie is in the control room.
Keeping you in line, Greg.
Today, we are both at headquarters in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I'll be back in Central Indiana in a couple hours. Looking forward to that drive. Thanks for tuning in for the final football scoreboard of the year. Definitely not our final football podcast. Later this week, we're going to have our state finals recap with Michelle Garman. Later this week, or possibly next week, depending on the availability of others and how busy my schedule gets, we'll have our season in review show. Name a player of the year, all Central Indiana team from Blackford, Delaware, Grant, Howard, Madison, and Tipton counties, plus Hamilton Heights and Sheridan in northern Hamilton County. We'll start off this week with girls golf. Again, depending on the availability of guests, will be sometime early in the week. We'll also name our all Central Indiana teams and players of the year from boys tennis, girls and boys soccer, girls and boys cross country, and girls volleyball. Also, things like coaches of the year, top newcomers, etc. I wouldn't dare do these things by myself, Susie. I got plenty of input from local media and coaches when choosing these teams. I will also recap Friday's games a little bit at the end here, but if you want full recaps, go back to Saturday's scoreboard show for Friday's games, and also tune in later this week for our state finals recap. In the surprise of the state finals, number 3 Providence won its first state championship in program history by beating number 1 North Judson 35-20. The Blue Jays had been number 1 in the state every single week this season. Providence senior quarterback Preston Kempf ran for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns and threw for a back-breaking touchdown pass in the final seconds of the first half to lift the Pioneers to their first Class A state championship. Providence also held North Judson's vaunted running game to 227 yards and just 4.8 yards per play. The Pioneers also forced a pair of turnovers. After North Judson scored first on a recovered fumble in the end zone, Kemp's 13-yard touchdown run gave Providence a 7-6 lead at the end of the first quarter. Early in the second, he scored on a 5-yard touchdown to put Providence up 14-6, and then came the dagger. With 2 seconds left in the half, Kemp found Kalen Sipes in the end zone with a 2-yard touchdown pass to put Providence ahead 21-6 at the half. The Jays scored first in the second half as well to get within 21-12 when senior Josiah McDaniel's 13-yard touchdown run. Kemp responded with a 44-yard touchdown run of his own. Then senior Cole Wilcox brought North Judson within striking distance, once again with a 1-yard touchdown plunge with 3:49 left. But Kemp then put the game away with a 46-yard touchdown run with 2 minutes and 8 seconds left in the contest. Kemp only threw 7 passes, but completed 3 of them for 48 yards. It was the Pioneers' third trip to state all time. They were 2A runners-up in 1993 and 1973. It's North Judson's 4th runner-up finish. They also lost state championship games in 1980, 1984, and 1985. Heritage Hills is on top of Class 3A for the first time in 24 years after beating reigning 2A state champion Bishop Luers 38-15 in perhaps the most impressive single-team performance of the weekend. Heritage Hills was up 2 touchdowns after 1 quarter. When Luers got within a touchdown midway through the second, the Patriots scored 14 straight points before halftime, the last coming on a 25-yard field goal by Carter Payne to put Luers in a 24-7 halftime hole. Heritage Hills junior quarterback Jet Goldsberry's 3rd rushing touchdown made it 31-7, and senior Hunter Meredith scored midway through the 4th to give the Patriots a 31-point lead over Lures. Teams just don't do that to the Lures very often. Goldsberry finished with 177 yards, including a 73-yard touchdown run to open the scoring. Meredith finished with 141 yards and scored twice. The Patriots finished with 399 total yards, including 328 on the ground. Goldsberry had 6 solo tackles, 8 total tackles, and 2 tackles for loss on defense. Senior back Daria Williams ran for 139 yards, and senior quarterback Devin Patterson rushed for 48 and threw for 40 for the Knights, who finished their season 10-5. After beating 3 straight top 10 teams, number 16 Lures couldn't make it 4 in a row. That was a theme on Saturday afternoon at Lucas Oil Stadium. The final game of the year went to the Decatur Central Hawks. Their first state championship in program history came with a 28-24 win over upstart Warsaw at Lucas Oil Stadium. Decatur Central dominated the first half with 6 successful drives and no punts. The only time the Hawks didn't score was an early interception by Warsaw junior Quentin Brock and a pair of missed field goals in the second half. They finished with 22 first downs, 286 yards rushing, and 421 total yards. Junior Pharrell Carter had 199 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns and was the star of the day for the Hawks. Decatur Central also scored twice on Bo Polston to Kashmir Hicks touchdown passes, a 38-yarder for the first score of the game, and an 8-yard score that put them ahead 21-7 with 7:44 left in the first half. Carter's first touchdown put Decatur Central ahead 13-7. He then put the game away with a 4-yard touchdown run that made it 31-17, and a 74-yard touchdown sprint that erased any doubt and put the Hawks up 21 points with 3:33 left in the game. Warsaw did have 337 yards on the ground with 3 rushers with 98 yards or more. Junior Brody Duncan had 101 yards and got the Tigers within 7 points with a touchdown early in the third quarter. Sophomore Tucker Reed finished with 99 yards, and Brock, a junior, had 98. Warsaw had beaten number 1 Concord, number 2 Lafayette Jeff, and number 3 Merrillville in order the last 3 weeks to reach the state championship. Of course, Decatur Central was number 4, so that would have really made history. I think the 1, 2, 3 in a row probably makes history all on its own. The final play of the year was a beauty when Carter intercepted Drew Sullivan's desperation heave with one hand with no time left on the clock. On Friday, Brownsburg won its first football state championship in 39 years with a 22-17 win over rival Westfield. It was the Bulldogs' second win over Westfield this season. The other was a 17-13 win on September 28th. John Hart made history by becoming the first coach in Indiana history ever to lead 3 different schools to a state championship: Evansville Reitz, Warren Central, and now Brownsburg. In the 4A game, New Palestine had 516 total yards and held East Noble to 262 and a 56-26 victory. It's New Pal's 4th state championship in the last 10 years. Josh Raines finished with 166 yards and went over 2,000 yards on the season. I feel bad for everybody on their schedule. Next year, Raines and quarterback Jacob Davis and the entire New Pal offensive line, which was completely dominant, all returns next season. And in 2A, Adams Central won its first state championship since 2000, also a theme of the weekend, by dominating from start to finish in a 46-6 victory over Linton Stockton. The Jets ran for 351 yards and a Class 2A record 7 rushing touchdowns. They led 19-0 at the half and scored the game's final 27 points. How's that for dominant? Again, we'll have a state finals recap sometime this week with Michelle Garman and hopefully some other guests. Thanks once again for listening. Always appreciate it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow us so you don't miss a single segment. And tell a friend. Did you laugh at the way I said tell a friend?
Mm-hmm.
You were laughing at me?
Yes, I was.
Stop laughing at me.
I'll laugh at you if I want to laugh at you.
Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I still love Susie.